Welcome to our first interview in our professional development series to help you speak, sound, and look like a leader. And today we're actually going to talk about how to act like a leader. I'm Linda Katz Wilner, founder of Successfully Speaking, and I've worked with leaders and aspiring leaders to help them improve their executive presence and their communication skills. I'm so excited today to have our guest, Julie East, who is the Vice President of Human Resources at the Atlas Restaurant Group. And she's a certified executive coach. Julie and I have known each other for many years, and I've actually had the pleasure of working with her and her team members at the Atlas Restaurant Group, as well as Klein's Family ShopRite. Julie, welcome. And I'm excited to get this interview started to talk to you about how leaders can be coaches to help empower the success of their teams.
Thank you, Linda. I'm really happy to be here with you today.
Yes. And Julie, why don't we start off with a question basically, why is it important for leaders to coach their team members?
There are so many great reasons to learn to be a coach. Employee development being one of the big ones. Leaders who coach instead of advise and direct are ensuring that they're building employees for the future who can learn to think for themselves and who can feel confident and accomplished in their roles.
And so coaching is a common term we hear, Julie.
Yes.
What does it actually mean to coach? Can anybody do that?
Anyone can learn how to coach. I have learned myself over the years that what I thought I was doing was coaching was actually not coaching. It was really more mentoring or advising. As leaders, we often think we have the greatest ideas ever and we want to share
Mhm.
those with our employees. However, it takes a little bit more restraint and discipline to sit back and ask a lot of questions to get your employees to come up with their own ideas and solve their own problems. And that really is what the heart of coaching is. It's learning to ask a series of open ended questions to help someone that you work with arrive at their own conclusions.
So, one of the skills which I always like to talk about is the listening.
Yes. So listening, huge component of coaching. I have an instructor for my own coach learning who says if you just listen carefully, the next question will become obvious. And
Mm.
I love that. It's really trusting the process of
Mhm.
asking questions will help you and the person to arrive at the very best outcome possible.
And it's not about you being the leader who's supposed to know everything.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. I mean, what a great thing. You get to coach as well as not have to have all the answers.
Right. Right. And I guess those are the best leaders who can step back, even if they're not a certified coach, but
Mhm.
they can step back and make sure that they're listening and not always directing. Is that right?
Correct. Yes. And, conventional wisdom in this year of 2023 tells us that a leader who is humble and who is, open about the fact that they do not have all the answers is
Mhm.
actually the most effective type of leader because they become human to their employee, who then can feel that the leader is approachable and really has the employee's best interest in mind.
I guess approachable is the answer because sometimes people think that if they're the leader, they need to know the answers. They
Hmm.
need to direct. They need to be the person in charge. And so I'm imagining that's difficult for leaders to step back and let other people come up with answers.
Yes, there's a lot of reasons why it's hard for a leader to step back because you're right. They may come with a conceived idea that they do have to have all the answers. And certainly there are some fields where being the subject matter expert is really important for that leader, but that's not the case in all situations. And that leader who has the ability to demonstrate humility and to even say, I'm not sure, but we're going to figure it out together, again, has a lot of credibility with their employees because that employee sees that leader as a human.
Hmm. And let's talk us through the process. What does it look like when a leader does coach a team member? How does
Mhm.
that start?
So it starts by carefully listening to the reason why your employee may want to talk to you, or why even a peer might want to talk to you. They may come and say, listen, I wanted just to get your ideas or your thoughts on this, right? Or I'm having an issue with this person or solving this problem. And it's very natural for us to want to help, right? So as a leader, we might, say, well, let me give you my advice or let me give you my recommendation. And so that initial discipline of holding back, asking a very open-ended questions such as, well, tell me more about that, right? That allows the person, the employee or the peer to be able to fully express. And a lot of times within that, you will hear what would be considered the goal of a coaching conversation. And once you hear that as a leader, you can say, let me make sure I'm sure on what I'm hearing you're saying and what it is you're looking for. And that will then show the employee or peer that the leader does understand. And then the leader can begin to ask a series of questions, such as what questions, how questions. We try to avoid the why question. So, for example, when a leader is hearing, say, an employee or a peer feeling a certain way.
And I think we just froze for a second. So hopefully Julie is coming back. So she's talking about when an employee feels a certain way, what can happen with that? Boy, this is fun. These are the exciting things that happen with LinkedIn Live, broadcasting live because we never know what's going to happen. Julie, it seems like you lost your connection. I'm not sure if you can hear me. All right. Well, let's talk while I'm waiting for Julie to get back on. Let's talk a little bit about the challenges of the leaders stepping back, asking questions, and waiting for the response. One thing Julie talked about was clarification. Make sure that when somebody says something, you clarify what they might be saying because maybe you don't have it correct. Reflecting back to that person so that person can then say, yes, that's what I'm talking about, or that is the problem. What I'm fascinated about, and I can't wait till Julie gets back on, is why do we avoid the why questions? And that's something that we want to see if she'll come back on and let us know this. Let me just check one thing. There she is. Julie,
I'm back.
you gave me the opportunity to start talking about what you were going to say and posing the questions. So thank you for coming back and
Oh, you're so welcome.
the exciting things about LinkedIn Live, and we'll see how I did
There
with
you
all of
go.
that.
Exactly.
But Julie, what I was starting to talk about was the reflection that you have to have and the clarification. But my big question was, why do you want to avoid the whys?
Yes, and I was actually telling everyone about that when I realized I wasn't really on anymore. So psychologically, the why question. So in the example that I was trying to give earlier, I said that if an employee expresses how they're feeling about something and then the manager says, well, why would you feel that way, right? It sounds very judgy, right? It sounds kind of
Mm,
judgmental, and
mhm,
it can really make the employee feel, like, oh, I'm an idiot, I'm really
mhm,
stupid for thinking that. So we try really hard when we're learning to coach to avoid the why question as much as we can so that we can focus more on the what or the how. So, for example, a way that we might rephrase that could be, what are some of your thoughts and feelings about that, as a way to get a little bit deeper into, what might be behind the emotion that they're talking about.
mhm. Okay, great, great. So the why could be judgmental. And that reminds me of a quote that I recently saw, and I
Hmm.
think I shared that with you. And it was from Carl Rogers, the psychologist, where he said, when someone really hears you without passing judgment on you, it's astonishing how elements that seem insoluble become soluble.
Hmm.
And so I think the key that I just took away from what you were saying is you want to avoid being judgmental.
Correct.
That must
Yes.
lock down the process, I would,
Yes.
or
Yes.
adds defensiveness. I would
It
assume.
certainly does. And, the other thing I wanted to comment on the quote that you just mentioned. I love that quote because it is truly in coaching, it truly is about listening. And the reason that we listen and ask questions in coaching is we believe that the person already has the answer inside
Ah,
of them. And that's the beauty of coaching, is to help that person gain clarity around what is that idea or that thought or that solution by asking and listening.
here's a question for you, Julie.
Mhm.
As you're talking, how and we talked about a psychologist, Carl Rogers. How do you differentiate coaching from therapy?
Great question. And in the any certified coach will get a nice lesson on the difference, not only between therapy and coaching, but also the difference between consulting and coaching, and the difference between mentoring and
Mm,
coaching. And so, therapy tends to focus on the past,
mm,
right? You have that vision of the person lying on the couch, tell me about your mother, the relationship with your mother. In coaching, we're not focusing on the past. We're really trying to create what we call forward momentum.
mhm,
Forward momentum being, okay, here's the situation. What have you thought of so far? What ideas do you have? How can we refine that idea a bit to make it actionable?
mhm,
That is all forward focused. And then, consulting would be more where the leader is actually giving advice, like we talked about, which is what we're
mhm,
trying to steer clear from. And
mhm,
then mentoring is probably a little bit more like coaching, or I'm sorry, like consulting, in that the mentor is expected to share their experiences and maybe what they have done in the past, where the coach would not do that unless on rare occasions when they ask permission from the person
mhm,
they're coaching.
mhm, mhm. And I always think about the differences between the coaching, the mentoring, uh, the what was the last one you said? The coaching,
Consulting.
mentoring, and the consulting, and I
Mhm,
consider myself a consultant.
mhm,
And I sometimes call myself a coach, but in reality, I'm really a trainer because I
mhm,
am teaching them what to do. I, of course, listen to certain issues and help them explore what their challenges are, but it
mhm,
makes me really see the delineation now between all
mhm.
or amongst the different titles, because training is a whole different piece because you are giving out, you are the traditional leader in that you have the answers and you give them. But if you
Right.
don't add some coaching into that, then
Mhm.
you're not getting them to do anything for themselves. I think that's an important
Yes.
part that you're talking about.
Yes. Yes, it is. And remembering why we do that in coaching is to build competence in,
Mhm.
helping a person realize that they actually do have the answers inside of themselves, as well as building confidence.
And so that's the benefit for the person you're coaching, that they're
Mhm.
building confidence. What is the benefit for the leader?
Yes, that's a great question. Well, I mean, as any leader who is actively focused on coaching their team realizes that they have to make an investment, that sometimes it'll take a little bit more time than just telling someone what to do,
Mhm.
right? You have
Mhm.
to have and invest that time up front. And then the benefits for the coach are just, especially a person who is in a leadership capacity in their own business or in an actual company, is that they're going to see their employee, increase their competence. They're going to be able to rely more heavily on that person to solve their own problems. And they're going to see the work get done potentially in a more creative way, even than the leader themselves would have come up with, because
Mm.
ownership is generated when someone is coached to answer their own questions and come up with their own solutions. And
Mhm.
so all of those things are beneficial to the leader because they can then show how they're developing their team, right? Helping their team, maybe even getting to the next level, or to be able to go off and work in a different area of the company. That's all about succession and making sure that the company that they're in has great succession planning for talent,
Mhm.
to continue to grow in the company. And that's something that we're really focused on here at Atlas, because we are a very quickly growing
Mhm.
organization. And so ensuring that our leaders are pouring into and developing their teams to be ready for next is really an important part of our business strategy.
Mm. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So the leader is helping the other people become leaders down the
Mhm.
road.
Yeah.
So there's certainly a benefit for everybody, right?
Yes.
The
Yes.
person who's coaching them as well as the person who's being coached. So they're
Mhm.
moving up in their organizations.
Yeah.
Is there anything I missed asking you about coaching and how leaders can coach to empower success?
I would say that, for anyone who is listening in or hearing our recording and you're a leader and or even a peer, right? Even
Mhm,
an individual contributor, but you want to grow in your leadership, there are a lot of resources on the internet about learning how to coach. There are also a lot of different schools out there that will teach you how to coach if you're very interested in really going deep with it. But I think the the key takeaway here for leaders who want to apply coaching in their leadership skill set is, again, focusing on pushing that discussion by asking back to the employee or the peer by asking those questions instead of just giving advice. And
mhm,
as I mentioned before, I can't reiterate enough, it takes a great deal of discipline to not give advice when you are a leader, to not tell or
mhm,
advise.
mhm,
And it's something that I still struggle with every day because in my role as HR, a lot of what I do in my job is advise, right?
mhm,
Give
mhm.
recommendations, tell people what to do. And
Sure.
so it was a major awakening for me to realize all that I had done before learning to coach had not actually been coaching.
And Julie, everything you're saying also applies to being a good friend, a good
Mhm.
family member, a good partner, because how many of us in situations when even somebody confides in us, we want to fix it. We want to tell them what we think is the answer.
Yes,
And that's
yes,
the
so
best
true.
way to help people.
Mhm.
We
Yes.
feel good about it maybe, but it's not helping. Right.
Well, on the other hand is, in your own family. So, for example, my husband he knows when I'm starting to do the coaching thing and he'll tell me immediately, take your HR hat off.
Right. And sometimes it's hard to separate, but those because there are blurry lines between
Yes.
those different roles, but I think just so many people want to be fixers and take
Mhm.
somebody out of their pain and help them, but
Yes,
that's not always the way to do it.
absolutely.
I'm going to ask this question, and I'm going to ask everybody I interview in the
Yeah.
upcoming series as well, that what do you think is an essential skill to help somebody speak, sound, look, and perhaps even act like a leader?
Mhm. Well, we've been talking about coaching, so I won't mention coaching because
Mhm,
that's, obvious that is
mhm,
I'm a big proponent of that. But I would say the idea of presenting yourself professionally as a leader
mhm.
is incredibly important in our world right now, especially as uh, companies, organizations do look and see how people are presenting themselves
Mhm.
in the public forum, whether it's social media or other places. And so I think for a person who wants to be a true leader is being selective about, what it is that you say publicly, what it is that you are, how you're representing yourself and your brand, especially online. I think that's very important.
That's wonderful because we always think that you just finished telling us that as a good coach, you should not be judgmental.
Hmm.
However, we're all judgmental
Yes.
when we're not in that coaching role. And so
Hmm.
people will judge us how we look, how we sound,
Yeah.
what we say, and how we act. So that was a great way to bring this together. Julie, thanks so much for all this information. And how can people contact you besides LinkedIn, which we hope
Yes.
everybody will connect with both of us on LinkedIn? But how can they contact you if they want to reach out?
Yeah, they absolutely can contact me at my email address at Atlas Restaurant Group, which is Julie at atlasrestaurantgroup.com. I
And
would, love to connect with any of your listeners about coaching or anything else we've spoken
right.
about today.
Right, and you could see that at the bottom of the screen as well. Well, Julie, thank you so much for being the first person I'm interviewing and to give me the opportunity to see what happens when technology goes awry and see if we can recover.
You're,
But
you're welcome.
thank you for coming back in. And I want to Thank you again. And please reach out to Julie. She is so knowledgeable and so wonderful. And I love working with her, and I love having her as a friend as well. And I want you to stay tuned because in 2 weeks, we do have another guest. And that will be on August 29th at the same time, 12 o'clock Eastern Time. And I will be interviewing Marcus Ogden, who is the CEO of Ogden Ventures. We will be discussing how servant leadership creates clarity in the corporate world. So stay tuned, join us for that. And until then, let's think about how leaders can coach their teams to ensure and empower them for success. Julie, thanks again. It was great speaking with you.
Thank you so much, Linda. My honor.
Okay.